Hello, welcome, and thank you for being here. That's greatly appreciated, and certainly thank all of our associates at Rape Counselors of East Alabama. This is a tremendous opportunity to learn more about your services. This is the second of 4 presentations by people from RCEA. A few basics before we begin. Video is up to you. Please keep your audio muted unless you are asking a question or presenting, of course. So today's topic is what to do if you're assaulted, and SANE, S-A-N-E capitalized, exams and forensics. And with that, I'll turn this over to Ms. Dondra Williams to continue with our presentation today. And again, thank you all.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having us back today. I am going to go ahead and share my screen again. So let me get our presentation pulled up. Okay. Are we able to all see the slides today? Okay, great. So again, we are the Rape Counselors of East Alabama. Our office number is located there, as well as our 24-hour hotline and our email where we can be reached at. My name is Dondra Williams, and I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Specialist here at RCEA. And I will let my counterparts introduce themselves as well.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda Carpenter. I am the Victim Services Program Coordinator here at RCEA, and I'm so glad to be joining you guys.
Hey, I'm Mary Sullen. I'm an intern with RCEA, and I'm super excited to be here today.
And I'm Claire, and I'm also an intern at RCEA.
Yes. So welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about SANE exams and forensics, and what we do with those, what they are, how we use them, and how they're beneficial to victims. First of all, let's go over a little bit of things behind sexual assault forensics. The source of this is the National Institute of Justice. And basically the National Institution of Justice have come up with best practices for nurse forensic exams, for forensics exams for sexual assault. So they say that behind every sexual assault case is a person whose life has been irrevocably altered. So the first responder, law enforcement, investigators, the forensic nurse examiners, laboratory analysts, victim advocates, and attorneys, all who support and interact these victims, have the opportunity to work together positively to impact the victim's post-assault experience and to improve the healing and recovery process. So we do work together in our community as sort of an interdisciplinary team in order to achieve outcomes for the victims. So the Sexual Assault Forensics Evidence Reporting Act, which is also referred to as SAFER, is focused on the accurate, timely, and effective collection and processing of DNA evidence in a sexual assault investigation. So in support of these efforts, the NIJ, they released, like I said, a set of 35 best practices in order to meet the community needs. So through the report, again, there's 35 recommendations, and this provides like a guide for advocates, practitioners, law enforcement to use a victim-centered approach to responding to sexual assault so that we can better support the client. As I talked about in our previous episode, if you hadn't seen it, you can go back and look at that video. We talked about how victims, they have the control taken away from them through their traumatic experience. And so what we like to do is give that control back to the victims. So we want to do as much as they want us to do and as little as they want us to do. So we do a victim-centered approach, which is how and what they want in order to meet their need. So we coordinate and we collaborate with sexual assault investigators to provide the reassurance and support to the victims of sexual violence. And this really improves victim engagement so that we can get to that healing and hopefully get a just resolution to the cases that's brought before the judicial system. So jurisdictions vary in their need of resources. We have some rural areas, we have some urban areas. So different resources are available to different agencies. So recommendations are different. So what this does is just provide a roadmap where different agencies and justice systems can take and lead from it what they need. So let's talk about the actual sexual assault exam.
So a rape kit, also known as a forensic exam. This is a kit performed by a SANE nurse to preserve possible DNA evidence and receive important medical care after a sexual assault. It consists of DNA evidence collected from your body, clothes, and other personal belongings. What is a SANE nurse? SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner. SANEs receive specialized education and clinical preparation in the care of survivors of sexual assault and can perform medical forensic examinations that meet standard criteria of assessment. Importance of DNA. So DNA increases the likelihood of the perpetrator being identified. It increases the likelihood of holding the perpetrator accountable. If the victim does press charges, DNA evidence carries weight in court and it helps build a stronger case against the perpetrator. It also prevents sexual assaults from occurring, since the perpetrators of violence tend to be serial offenders and sexual violence tends to be a serial crime. Having the DNA evidence increases the chances of getting the offender off the streets and prevents future instances from occurring. Examination information. It's important to prepare the clients as much as possible as to what to expect during the exam, because this may be the first time for the client that they have had a pelvic examination, and it may also re-traumatize them. Typically, a sexual assault nurse examiner or SANE nurse will perform the examination. Persons 14 years of age or older can consent to their own medical treatment. Victims can decline any part of the exam that they're not comfortable with. If the client chooses to report the rape, a rape kit may be used to collect evidence. And during the examination, the examiner will read the instructions to the kit to ensure the validity of the evidence.
And also, Mary Selwyn told us that typically a SANE will perform the examination. And this is sometimes due to the availability of an actual SANE nurse. So in the incidences where a SANE nurse isn't available, a physician is able to perform the kit and collect that evidence that is needed. Okay, so let's talk about what happens during a sexual assault forensic exam. So the first thing that happens is immediate care. So if you have injuries that need immediate attention, those will be taken care of first. So when we say immediate attention, if you have any bleeding going on medically, if you have any broken bones, if you have any lacerations, if you have a concussion, anything that requires medical attention, that's the first thing that the SANE nurse will pay attention to and take care of, because we don't want to, or they don't want to perform an examination and you have a gash that is requiring stitches. So that is the very first thing. She does a quick assessment to see, to identify any immediate needs. The next thing that will happen is that she will take a complete medical history, kind of like if you were going in for a physical, like an annual routine physical. She's going to ask you about your medications, any pre-existing conditions, any questions pertaining to your health history. Some of those questions can be very sensitive, where she's asking about recent consensual sexual activity. And those questions are just designed so that when collecting DNA and doing the forensics, that we know what possible other evidence might be there and what other evidence, could be connected to the perpetrator. So they're going to also be asked about the details of what happened to identify all the potential areas of injuries and places on the body and clothes where evidence may be located. So although there's very specific things that are done in the forensic exam, every assault is different, which may require the examiner to have to do different things. Okay, so they're very individualized depending on what is needed. Benefits of getting a sexual assault exam is, this is a worry of a lot of people, but it's no cost to you. The state of Alabama does cover the cost of the exam. Also, you can go ahead, you have time to decide if you want to report, and this is making a criminal report or just doing a police report or press charges. So you can have a SANE exam done and have it labeled under Jane Doe, where it's given just a number. So you're not required at the time to make a decision if you want to use it or not. The hospital will hold and store that exam kit for up to 90 days and give you the opportunity to decide whether or not you would like to utilize that for justice reasons. You do have 72 hours in order to get an exam done, and that's just the time in which they can collect the DNA, the possible DNA evidence that is there. So after that 72 hours, no kit can be performed. So one of the benefits is just to have it just in case the victim decides the route they want to take. It also increases the likelihood of prosecution if the victim decides that they want to go that route. Also, their health matters. There's other things than just DNA that you will receive from this kit, which we will talk about later, but that addresses health-related medical issues that can come as a result of sexual contact. What exactly happens during this forensic exam? So the victim receives a full head-to-toe examination. So this can be, like I said, is individual based off of your experience. That's why we want them to give an accurate history. This includes a full body examination, internal examinations of the mouth, the vagina, the anus. It can also include taking samples of blood, urine, bloody surface areas, and sometimes even hair samples. The SANE nurse may take pictures of your body to document injuries, and this is all with your permission. They also may collect items of clothing, including undergarments, also any other forms of physical evidence that's there that may be used to identify the perpetrator that can be packaged for analysis, such as a torn piece of the perpetrator's clothing, a stray hair, or debris. And again, we say with permission, because what we need to note also is that the victim also has a choice to have parts of this examination done, and they can refuse parts of the examination. So these are all suggested things that they can have done, but ultimately they make the decision on what they want to have done. Okay, the next thing is possible mandatory reporting. If the victim is a minor or a elderly person, vulnerable elderly person, or a disabled person, the person performing the exam may be obligated to report to law enforcement and or DHR. Follow-up care, they may be offered prevention for treatment for STIs and other forms of medical care that require a follow-up appointment with the medical professional. These exams can take a few hours to complete. STDs and follow-up treatment. So victims are offered antibiotics post-assault for prophylactic treatment for any treatable diseases such as like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and trichomonas. Now, the risk of getting HIV from a sexual assault is low, and that's dependent on many factors. And even if they were to test for HIV at that specific time, it would not show up. So that's a part of the follow-up care as well that they're offered. So victims are also informed where and when to follow up for additional testing for things such as HIV. They're given information sheets with signs and symptoms to report and where to go for follow-up. And they're also reminded of what they must do to have protected sex for the next 6 months to a year in order to protect their partners and, of course, to protect themselves. So now we have our victim specialist, our victim services coordinator, who is going to talk to us about law enforcement and that process. I think we have a little feedback, but we got it. Okay, so I'm going to mute so that Amanda can give us that portion.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about law enforcement. So a lot of the times when we do have victims or survivors, talking to the police is very hard. And a lot of that just has to do with, you know, in life, we don't really want to talk to the police unless we have to. It can be very scary. Their uniforms can be very intimidating. And so we give victims and survivors the opportunity to have a victim advocate there with them. And so I do go with them a lot to the police station while they do their written statement. And it takes a lot of courage because it is one of the most unreported crimes out there. So whenever law enforcement does get involved and a victim goes to the hospital and they do decide to have the SANE kit done, they may have the Jane Doe kit done, which is basically they haven't decided whether they want to talk to the police or not. If they are for sure, they know they want to talk to the police, they know they want to press charges, this is when law enforcement will, once the kit has been done, they will go to the hospital and they will actually collect that evidence. Whenever a SANE kit is done, the evidence cannot be tampered with. So the only people that are allowed to touch that kit is the SANE nurse. The SANE nurse locks it up into a cabinet behind several things until the police can arrive and actually pick up that evidence. So what happens to it once it's collected there, you know, like I was saying earlier, there is a protocol for how the evidence is handled and used in investigation. The evidence will be provided to the law enforcement who may send it to the crime lab. So that's kind of the process that they actually have to go to the hospital and sometimes has to wait there until a police officer arrives to pick up that kit. Then it's going to be taken to a lab. They will analyze the material and develop the DNA profiles that are unique to the specific person. And then the lab works with the law enforcement officials to compare those profiles to the DNA of the potential suspects. Can you turn the next slide? Thank you. So what are some common concerns about reporting? There's a lot of different reasons. Like I had mentioned earlier, anytime that law enforcement's talked about, a lot of survivors, a lot of victims get really nervous about talking to a police officer. It may be that they're fear of getting in trouble because you may have had a 19-year-old that went into a bar and they used a fake ID and they had been drinking. And so they're very nervous about, well, I was drinking, I was underage, I shouldn't have been in that bar. And I can tell you now that whenever a sexual assault has been reported to the police, they are not worried about how you got in the bar, where you got the fake ID. All they're worried about is trying to help you through this process and give you justice by making sure they get the person that did this to you. So anytime that you have the concern of, well, I wasn't where I was supposed to be, I shouldn't have been drinking, I'm underage, I, smoked some pot that earlier that day, or I may have done a line of cocaine, whatever it may be, the police are not worried about that. They're worried about you and your safety. A lot of them they have fear that they're not going to be believed by the law enforcement. It just may be that they think there's not enough evidence. They went home with someone, they, went to their apartment, they went to bed with them. They were just going to sleep over, didn't want anything out of it. So a lot of them maybe, have fear that, oh, well, they're going to ask me why I went over there. And so they may not believe me. They know the person. A lot of times it is somebody that they know. It may be someone that they are in a relationship with at that time. It may be their spouse. It may be an ex-boyfriend. It may be an ex-girlfriend. And a lot of times they just don't want to get them in trouble. They're scared. And even though, what's been done to them has been done to them, they're still in the back of their mind scared because they're like, I don't want to get them in trouble. It may be that the perpetrator got scared away or stopped before finishing the assault. And so the victim may be unsure of what, happened. A lot of times we do have victims that have been drugged or they think they were possibly drugged and they remember having one drink and they remember going home and then they wake up the next morning and their clothes are not on them. They can't, locate the person they went home with. And so they're just a little nervous because they're like, I don't really remember what happened. And so then they have the fear that, the police may not believe them or there may not be enough, like there may be no physical injuries. And so they're worried that there's not enough proof. So these are just some common concerns that victims and survivors have about reporting. So if someone does decide that they do want to get law enforcement involved, of course, there's lots of different things, different ways to approach that. They can call 911 when the incident happens. They can contact their local police. They can go to the police station. They can just tell an officer that they want to file a police report. Filing a police report and pressing charges are two different things. So if someone's still kind of unsure and they just don't really know what to do with it, they can file a police report, which basically just puts documentation there. If they decide they don't want to press charges at that time, they have a whole year to decide whether they want to press charges or not. But filing the police report just kind of makes documentation. Or they can go to the ER. There are a lot of times that the police officer, if they do decide after they have their SANE kit done that they are like, yeah, I'm ready to report it, they'll actually have law enforcement come to the ER and take their statement there and then follow up with them with a detective at a later date. So these are just some ways that they can report. Also, Dondra, I think we missed a slide. Can you go back like 3 or 4 slides, please? Yes. Okay. So reporting to the police, I thought there was a slide there. So there is no statute of limitations on when a victim or survivor can report a rape to the police. So I've actually had people that will come and they want me to go to the police station with them over an assault that happened 45 years ago. I've had some that want to go a year later. I've had some that wanted to go 2 weeks later. I've had some that want to go a week later. It's really all up to the victim and the survivor and what they're most comfortable with. If they do want to press charges, it is good for them to go ahead. The sooner the better, just because of the evidence. Because a rape kit in the state of Alabama has to be done within 72 hours. And after that 72 hours, they're unable to perform the rape kit just because most people have had a bath. They, used the bathroom several times. They've eaten, they've done all of those things. But that's the reason that we have, so like within that 72 hours, they have an opportunity to do the rape kit. And if they don't do a rape kit, I don't ever want anyone to ever feel like, oh, well, I can't, go on with this process because I didn't have a rape kit done. You can still press charges. You still can have a lot of evidence even without a rape kit. It's just very good to have that rape kit when it is that time, if it does, go to trial. Again, if the survivor's unsure about reporting to the police, that's why the hospital offers that Jane Doe kit. Basically, it's just a case number. Their name's not attached to it until they actually decide they do want to follow up with the police. This process gives the victim or survivor the chance to safely store evidence should they decide to report at a later date. The rape kit is kept at the hospital for 90 days under a Jane Doe. And the reason they give 90 days is just because, the way a person may feel when a sexual assault happens that day, 2 months later, 3 months later, they may feel completely different. They may at first want to press charges and that's what they want to do, but they're still a little unsure about it. And then 90 days later, they're like, you know what? I want to forget this incident happened. I just want to move on with my life. Or you may have someone that's very adamant. I don't really want to press charges. I don't want to go through this. And then after a couple of months or 3 months, they may begin getting upset and mad about it. And it's like, no, I want justice. So that's the benefit of, having that Jane Doe kit done and holding it for 90 days. So, okay, Dondra, you can go back to the other slides. So again, when you're responding to a survivor, the chances of you, running into someone that's been sexually assaulted are very high because it's 1 in 6. And so if you kind of look around a room that you're in, that's a lot. And so if you ever do have a family member or a friend, or even maybe a stranger comes to you, make sure that you always respond by believing them and telling them that you believe them. Don't ask many questions, especially if it's like your friend. It's very easy for us to get very caught up and ask what happened. What did, tell me all the details. A lot of the time, just them telling you about the assault is sometimes really hard for them. And so asking them a lot of questions can be very overwhelming to them. So just making sure that it's okay to ask questions, but just don't try to ask too many questions. Be non-judgmental. It may be that you all, went out with a bunch of friends and you told them, you should not have done that, or you shouldn't have done this, or I told you not to go home with him or her. Just try not to be non-judgmental because, sexual assault, it's never the victim's fault. No matter if they went home with them, how much they were drinking, it is never their fault. Actively listening and normalizing their feelings, letting them know that the way they feel is very normal. A lot of the times, we watch a lot of TV and we see how people may be responding to sexual assault. Everybody has their own coping way of dealing with things. And so it may be ignoring it. It may be, you may go to the hospital. There's times I've been to the hospital and I have had a victim very upset and crying. I've had sometimes when I walk in and they're just sitting there, not really saying anything. I've had some that were sitting in there laughing and joking. It's just whatever they use for their coping mechanism. And so just because they're not reacting the way you would react or think you would react doesn't mean, that it didn't happen. So just remembering that every survivor responds differently to trauma, and have many different emotions. This is real life. It's not the movies, and people have their own way of handling crisis. I know that was a lot, so thank you guys so much. Yeah. So if anyone has any questions for me, just let Dondra know, and Dondra can continue on.
I have a number of questions. This is really interesting, and I really appreciate all that information in such a short period of time. It's not easy to do.
So Amanda,
Sure,
we need you to listen for questions.
Okay. I have a couple. Does anyone else have a question before I ask my? Okay. One question I have is, how serious a problem is it now, delays in processing rape kits? I know a number of years ago, warehouses were found with, 100,000 unprocessed rape kits from decades ago. Is that still a problem?
So I do know, a lot of the times, sometimes we know when a victim has gone back and decided to press charges. I know that would be more of a question for our SANE nurse, but I can definitely get that answer for you. I definitely know that there are a lot of the times where, sometimes the hospital may even hold those kits a little bit longer than 90 days. So I'm not really sure about that answer. So I don't want to tell you something wrong, but I can definitely find that answer for you and have Dondra email you that once I talk to our SANE nurse. She can let me know kind of, with storage and stuff like that.
So I think that was a big issue that kind of discouraged women from coming forward and reporting sexual assaults, because there, in a sense, was no justice. If the rape is processed, it doesn't get to the legal system, why go through all that kind of re-traumatizing?
And we can agree with that. Amanda, can you talk a little bit about how lengthy the process is, like from the time of an actual assault to the time of an actual court date, what that looks like? So it is a lengthy process.
So a lot of the times what I've seen since I've been here working with rape counselors of East Alabama, once someone gets the courage, to go through the process, this is basically kind of how it is. They file a police report with a police officer. If they decide they want to press charges within that week, they will send it to a detective. Depending on what's going on in that county and with that police station is how quick they're going to get back with that victim. They usually, though, around here, I haven't seen any problems with it, but they're usually pretty quick. They call the victim back either that day or the next day, and they start their process. Once they start the process of investigating, which means they'll have the victim come to the police station and do a written statement, they'll record them, and they'll just talk to them, and then they will go and talk to the perpetrator, collect their evidence. Once they've done all of that, they will go through either a preliminary hearing or the grand jury. And that's when a lot of the time, the police officer or the detective is the one that goes to grand jury. And when they go to grand jury, there's kind of like a mini jury that oversee it. And half of those jurors have to say, yes, there is enough evidence for us to move forward to the next step. Well, grand jury sometimes only happens, I want to say, like every other month or something like that, or it may happen like 2 or 3 times a year. It's not very often. And COVID-19 has definitely made that difficult, very much so. So there's a lot of things that happen, but it does take a while for it to get to grand jury. And then when it gets to grand jury, very seldom do they ask the victim to come back in and that jury asks them some questions. Usually it's just the police officer, detective that says, okay, this is my evidence. And then if half of them say, yes, we think there's enough, then they'll move to the process of the trial. That trial could be a year later, or it could be 5 years later. It just depends. Actually, right now, there's a trial that I'm going to tomorrow, and it happened in 2017. So that's a long time. A few months ago, I went to a trial that was back in 2014.
Right.
So it is definitely a very long process. It's very sad, and I hate that. And that is why whenever I do talk to my victims and survivors, you know, we all want a quick fix and want it to happen right then. And I'm very real with them when I tell them that this is going to be a very lengthy process, and you may not get the outcome that you want, but you need to make sure that when you do this, that you know that you're doing the right thing. And no matter what happens at the end of that trial, you feel good about it. Because sexual assault is one of the hardest crimes to find guilty. And that's because there's a lot of he said, she said. It is hard for a victim or survivor to have to get up on the stand and have to relive what they've tried for a long time to try to heal from. So it is a hard process. It's a 50-50. You really do not know what's going to happen in trial. So we always encourage them, you know, to talk to the police if that's what they want, but I do let them know, or RCEA lets them know, it is going to be a very, very lengthy process. There are times when I was like, okay, there's no way this guy or girl is not going to be found guilty during this process. And then the perpetrator walks away and there was so much evidence. Or there may be another trial that you're like, okay, there's not a whole lot of evidence. So they're probably, you know, not, the perpetrator's going to probably be free. And then they turn around and they're guilty. You know, you basically have the jurors just, you know, everybody has their opinion and they have to hear it. And so you really just don't know what's going to happen during trial. But it's always, you know, it's whatever the survivor wants to do, because, you know, they've had so much control taken from them. And so we want to give them that control back. And that's why a lot of the times we just give them their options and we support them 150% on whatever they want to do. And so it is a very difficult, it is a difficult process. And it is, it's a long, lengthy. And so I make sure that the victims know that this may be years down the road till you actually see justice. So yeah, it's hard. And then COVID-19 has definitely not helped us at all. Actually, this trial that I'm going to has been rescheduled 3 or 4 times now. Mm-hmm. So it was supposed to go to trial a couple of years ago, and it got continued, and then it got continued again because of COVID and being able to have jury selection. And now it is going to trial tomorrow. So we're hoping for the best.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, you're dealing with people, which is psychology. I mean, I'm an associate professor of psychology at Troy University.
Okay.
And
Can I turn your microphone?
okay, see if that helps. I'm an associate professor of psychology at Troy University, and so much of what you're saying comes down to you're dealing with people. And people are not necessarily rational. They're not necessarily predictable. So you have one case that seems watertight and nothing happens, and another one seems flimsier, and there's a big judgment convicted. Yeah, it's a structure of our legal system too. I also
And
have,
it only takes one person to disagree with that jury, just one person, and that's what makes it really hard.
yes, it's not a predictable system at all. I had a question about, do you know approximately how many trained SANE nurses there are in Alabama? And are you required to have a certification with training and all that? You probably mentioned that and I missed it, but I appreciate something on that.
Dondra, you,
we're feeding off of each other. Let me turn mine down a little bit. So, or Claire, yeah, somebody. Okay, so the thing is, we do East Alabama. So we can talk to this about the SANE nurses in East Alabama. Amanda may know better for the state. So we do Chambers, Macon, Russell, Tallapoosa, Lee County, and did I say Russell? If not, Russell County. So we operate out of, our SANE nurses operate out of East Alabama Medical Center. And we have how many trained, Amanda? About 5?
I think we have about 7 or 8 right now, SANE nurses that are trained. However, because the hospital staff is so understaffed, and it is really hard because they are on call. And so they kind of get to choose when they're available to actually do, because a lot of the times we'll have a SANE nurse that's working the ER room, and they have to stop and they have to find a stopping to be able to perform that kit. I know right now our SANE nurse coordinator is working very hard at trying to get education out there and get more SANE nurses certified and trained, because right now she's down a lot of them just for different reasons. One of them it just had a baby, one of them is pregnant, different things like that. So she's doing a lot of them.
But there is a certification process that goes with that. So a registered nurse would have to go through the specific training in order to become certified to perform those exams.
And they have to be a nurse for at least 2 years before they can even qualify to become a SANE nurse.
Right. And right now, the training is in Birmingham. It's not even offered here. That is in East Alabama. So that is one of the things that happens. And right now, the way it's set up is the state does reimburse the medical system to pay for that program. So that's how East Alabama Medical Center is able to have that. Every hospital actually does not have a SANE program.
We are very, very fortunate at East Alabama Medical Center to have a SANE program. We are so blessed, and we have some pretty amazing SANE nurses. And I think overall nationally, there's only about 2,000 SANE nurses. So I may be wrong on that number. That's an internet number, so don't hold me to that number. But it is definitely a demand for it, just like there's a demand for nurses. And so, yeah. So right now, our SANE nurses are working as hard as they can. And we're very fortunate to have. That's the reason, like in your area, Phoenix City, in Russell County, a lot of times we will have, if it's possible, for our victims and survivors to go to East Alabama Medical Center, just because we do have that SANE program and a SANE nurse that will be able to actually perform that kit. But like Dondra had mentioned earlier, a physician is able to do one. It's just, in any situation, especially if it goes to court, it's much better if a SANE nurse has actually provided that kit.
I have another question. I mean, I have 1,000, but anyway. So, how accurate do you think local statistics on sexual assaults are? 'Cause that seems to be, really incredibly underestimated nationwide. Do you have any sense of that now?
Well, we don't have a sense of the percentage. We know that there is a large, if you go to rain.org, they have the statistics and they keep the statistics nationally for each area and state. But we do know that sexual assault, it goes unreported. I don't have the exact numbers, but it is on rain.com. How the percentage that goes underreported, and the rate is even higher for male victims.
I'm also wondering that it tends to be something that local communities want to underplay. Everyone wants to say we have a safe community, we have a safe university, we really don't want this to get out, and that seems antithetical to what's
right.
good
And
for
that is,
women.
and yes, ma'am, it goes hand in hand. It's taboo, even in families, when you have family members who are perpetrators. And so it goes even down to that level of, family members that are perpetrators, they are less likely to be reported as well for that. The stigma around the family, the implications that would have on the family, even if you look at some like national celebrity type cases like the Duggars, where they have the recently convicted son who, there were reports of him actually having abused some of the sisters, in which they took care of it through closed doors in the church. And then he went on to do other things outside of that. So, all of that has a lot to play in it. So definitely universities want to keep their criminal rate down, their safety rating, at a good percentage. So it does go underrated. So that's one of the things that we do as rape advocates is we provide prevention, which in the next series, you'll be talking and hearing from my prevention educator, who she goes into detail, but her main focus is educating the community so that we can change the culture and the approach that sexual violence has around it. And even some communities have different definitions of what sexual violence and sexual assault is.
And I have one more question about the SANE approach. Can pregnancy prevention be part of the SANE services?
It is. One of the things that's also offered is what's called the Plan B, in which the SANE nurse does give a thorough explanation on the Plan B, how it works. And the Plan B, now the sexual assault exam, there's a 72-hour window for that. But the Plan B, there's a 5-day window for that to actually have that. And she explains that because, again, that is personal choice if they want to take that. And there's some valuable information that she gives about that, including knowing that the Plan B does not delete or abort a pregnancy. It only prevents a pregnancy, that if you are already pregnant, it will not stop a pregnancy or end or terminate a pregnancy, but it can prevent a pregnancy. So that's some of the information that she shares with the victims. Are there any other questions? So if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you for attending the session today, and we look forward to seeing you next week in one of our prevention geared focused presentations. And Dr. Milligan, I will turn it over to you to close the class. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you very much for this very interesting and valuable presentation today, and for the work you do for our community, the state, and really for all of us. I truly appreciate that. And I will try to spread your information as widely as possible, and hope that we can have some further collaborations between Troy University and RCEA. It's been a pleasure meeting you all. And thank you for being here. And I look forward to our next meeting next week. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Milligan, how many students do you approximately think that will actually see this video?
I can't guarantee they'll view it, but I will. There will be, let's see, I have.
And Amanda, I've talked to her about that, and she also sends me a list of the copy of the other professors she sent it to. So we have that part.
Awesome.
I can spread it more widely. I just know that, you want to know where it is being viewed. And in fact, I have I'm teaching a class online in Malaysia, and I can post it there as well. I'm sure many of them would like to be here, but it's like 1 a.m. their time. So, but I will post it there. And on my 2 classes here, I have 100 students between forensic and psychology of women, and give it to other faculty who are interested in posting it in their classes as well. So I think it will have a domino effect or a geometric progression of it.
Well, we appreciate you so much and spreading the word. That means a lot to us. So anytime you need us to come or do it in person or do Zoom, whatever you need us to do, we are more than happy to come out and talk about our services.
And actually, we have an annual psychology conference in April. So you could do a presentation for that group as well, if you're interested. I can send you information.
We would love to do that.
Absolutely.
Great. Excellent.
And you said that was in April?
Yeah, it's the last Friday in April.
Okay, because that's actually Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So that would actually be perfect. We would love to do that. Is it going to be virtual, or how will the conference be?
And due to COVID, it's been virtual the last 2 years. I think the plan is to have it
our
on,
connection is getting a little.
the plan is to have it on the Troy University campus in Troy. What I would like is to have a combination so that we can have some virtual presentations as well as on campus, but I'll have to talk to the organizers about that. But the plan is to try to get back to semblance of normalcy and have it on campus, which is what we did for many years pre-pandemic. But
we would be happy to come to campus as well and be able to present it. And right, so just let us know, and if that is something you'd like for us to do, we could get that prepared. Definitely.
That was great. Well, I will talk to our chair about that, and I think it'd be a tremendous value to all of us. Again,
thank you again.
And I will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Have a blessed one.